The fastest way to lose happiness is to make it your main goal. The more you chase it, the more it slips away, like a shadow that moves just out of reach. This is the paradox at the heart of modern life. Everywhere you look, happiness is sold as the ultimate achievement. Self-help books promise the secret formula, influencers curate perfect lives, and society tells you that if you're not constantly happy, something is wrong. But for all this obsession, why does true contentment seem rarer than ever? We live in an era where happiness is treated as a product, something to be acquired, optimized, and maintained at all costs. Pleasure is instant, entertainment endless, and distractions are always within reach. And yet, anxiety, depression, and a sense of emptiness continue to rise. Could it be that we are approaching happiness in the wrong way? That by making it an expectation rather than a byproduct, we are actually ensuring our own dissatisfaction? This raises a deeper question. Are we truly meant to be happy all the time? Or is happiness something far more elusive, something that comes not from chasing pleasure, but from engaging fully with life, even in its struggles? One of the biggest reasons happiness feels so fleeting is the hedonic treadmill, the psychological phenomenon where people quickly adapt to positive changes, making lasting satisfaction impossible. The raise you worked so hard for, the dream relationship, the new house, at first, they bring excitement. But soon, that excitement fades and you return to your baseline level of happiness, craving the next high. No matter how much you achieve or accumulate, the treadmill keeps running, pushing the goalposts further away. This is why wealth, success, and comfort fail to provide long-term fulfillment. Studies show that even people who win the lottery experience only a temporary boost in happiness before returning to their previous emotional state. The same happens in reverse. Those who experience tragedies like losing mobility often adapt over time, proving that external circumstances alone do not dictate well-being. If happiness were purely a matter of acquiring more, these facts wouldn't make sense. But they do, because the mind does not stay satisfied. It normalizes everything. Worse yet, modern culture fuels dissatisfaction by promoting negative self-evaluation. Social media floods people with curated images of others, seemingly living in a state of constant joy and success. Self-help culture implies that if you're not perfectly happy, you must be doing something wrong. This creates a toxic cycle. The more people compare their reality to unrealistic ideals, the more inadequate they feel. Instead of accepting that happiness fluctuates naturally, they begin to see themselves as failures for not being happy all the time. This is why chasing happiness directly often leads to the opposite: frustration and emptiness. The more one tries to fix the feeling of dissatisfaction, the more aware they become of their supposed lack. Instead of living, they analyze their emotions, wondering why they don't feel as happy as they should. Happiness becomes something to measure, track, and optimize, but in doing so, it transforms into an unattainable standard. The lesson is clear. Happiness is not a permanent state, nor is it something that can be possessed like an object. It is fluid, momentary, and often a byproduct of pursuing meaning rather than pleasure. The more one obsesses over it, the more it escapes, because real fulfillment is not found in the endless chase, but in learning to embrace the full spectrum of life's experiences. Social media has taken the paradox of happiness and placed it on steroids. Never before have people been so constantly exposed to the curated highlights of others' lives. The result? A distorted perception of reality where happiness appears to be the norm. Struggle is invisible, and any deviation from constant joy feels like personal failure. When we compare ourselves with others, we are much more likely to compare their best moments with our worst. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok turn this into a daily ritual. Users see carefully edited snapshots of success, love, and adventure, but rarely the boredom, failure, or loneliness that coexist with them. This illusion of perfect lives creates a subconscious sense of inadequacy. A study by the University of Iowa found that limiting social media use to 30 minutes per day significantly reduced depression and loneliness, suggesting a direct link between excessive online comparison and mental distress. The problem isn't just that people compare themselves to unrealistic standards, it's that they mistake those standards for reality. Over time, this constant exposure erodes self-esteem, making ordinary life feel dull and insufficient in contrast. Adding to this is the dopamine trap, the way social media exploits the brain's reward system. Every like, comment, and notification provides a small hit of pleasure, similar to how gambling or drugs operate. But this gratification is fleeting, pushing users into a cycle of compulsive scrolling in search of the next dopamine rush. As Soren Kierkegaard put it, the unhappy person is one who has an idea of happiness and keeps trying to reach it, only to find it forever elusive. Social media users chase validation in the form of engagement, but no amount of external approval can provide lasting fulfillment. Worse, this need for validation fuels negative self-evaluation. When people tie their self-worth to online recognition, their mood becomes dependent on algorithms and audience reception. If a post gets fewer likes than expected, it's easy to feel invisible, rejected, or even like a failure. The irony is that this system creates both the desire for happiness and the conditions that make it unreachable. Because real happiness isn't performative, and yet, social media rewards performance over authenticity. In the end, social media transforms happiness from an organic, personal experience into a competitive, externalized metric. It shifts the focus from being happy to appearing happy, making true contentment harder to attain. The more people rely on digital validation, the more they surrender their emotional well-being to forces beyond their control. To escape this manufactured unhappiness, one must be willing to disconnect, not just from devices, but from the illusion that happiness is something that needs to be constantly proven. I really enjoy literature and like to use it as an example in my videos, so let's talk about one of the greatest short novels you can read, Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. This book is complex. It touches on existentialism, free will, and self-destruction. But for our discussion, we can find some key references to the paradox of happiness. The protagonist, known only as the underground man, is a bitter, isolated intellectual who seems incapable of being happy, despite his intelligence and self-awareness. Instead of seeking fulfillment, he actively sabotages himself, trapped in endless overthinking and contradiction. The underground man is the embodiment of how overanalyzing happiness makes it unattainable. He understands human nature deeply but despises it. He desires connection but rejects it. At one point, he admits, man is sometimes extraordinarily, passionately in love with suffering. This highlights one of Dostoyevsky's most powerful ideas. Happiness is not always what people truly seek. Many, like the underground man, are drawn to struggle, even misery, because it provides a sense of meaning. This is why those who obsessively chase pleasure often find themselves feeling empty. Dostoyevsky contrasts happiness with meaning. In his novels, his most profound characters, Alyosha from the brothers Karamazov, Raskolnikov from Crime and Punishment, don't find fulfillment in pleasure or success. Instead, they find it in suffering, redemption, and confrontation with their own flaws. Happiness, as a passive state of comfort, is not enough for the depth of human existence. As Dostoyevsky famously wrote, pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. It is through hardship that one truly understands themselves. The underground man is a warning. If you spend your life analyzing happiness, searching for a perfect formula, you will end up paralyzed, lost in thought, but unable to live. He ridicules the idea of a utopian society where people would have everything they desire, arguing that even in paradise, humans would create chaos just to feel alive. Maybe you can associate this with my previous video too, but still, Dostoyevsky suggests that people do not simply want happiness. They want purpose, struggle, and the chance to overcome. This is the key lesson. True satisfaction doesn't come from comfort alone, but from confrontation with the self. Chasing happiness as a goal often leads to disappointment, but embracing challenge, growth, and even suffering can create a much deeper and more lasting fulfillment. Dostoyevsky's characters remind us that life's greatest meaning is often found not in avoiding pain, but in learning how to transcend it. So, what's the takeaway? Again, happiness isn't something you can chase directly. It's not a goal, it's a byproduct of meaning, engagement, and a life lived with intention. The more you obsess over whether you're happy, the more it slips away. Instead, fulfillment comes from pursuing something greater than happiness itself, whether that's personal growth, mastery, relationships, or a purpose you define for yourself. Now, let's be clear. This is not an apology for complacency or suffering for its own sake. I'm not saying you should accept misery or give up on improving your life. Quite the opposite. My point is that true satisfaction doesn't come from external validation, momentary pleasure, or a life free of difficulty. It comes from being real with yourself, understanding who you are, what truly matters to you, and aligning your actions with that deeper purpose. It's about owning your struggles, your successes, and everything in between. This means embracing discomfort, challenge, and responsibility, not as burdens, but as paths to genuine fulfillment. Think about it. The moments you feel most proud of yourself are rarely the easy ones. They're the moments when you pushed through difficulty, overcame something that once seemed impossible, and proved to yourself what you're capable of. That's the kind of deep, lasting satisfaction that no quick dopamine hit can ever replace. So, here's my challenge to you. Stop chasing happiness. Start chasing something greater. Define your own path instead of following the one society lays out for you. Don't measure your life by whether you feel happy every second. Measure it by your growth, your resilience, and the sense of purpose that keeps you moving forward. Because when you live with intention, happiness will follow, not as the goal, but as the natural outcome of a life well lived. In the end, it's not about feeling good all the time, it's about being whole. About looking at yourself in the mirror and knowing that no matter what, you are someone you respect.